Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Agency Rocket Show, where Chelsea and I talk about business and creative and growth and really just the general chaos of running a creative agency. Brought to you by yours truly, Liz Hunt, and my
Chelsea Poppens.
The best and only Chelsea Poppens. What?
Woo. Ba 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 ba. This episode, we're going to talk about our difficult client experiences respectfully and how we've overcome some of the challenges of agency life and communicating with a client or even communicating internally.
When I think about some of the difficult experiences that we've had, I think of, one comes to mind about there was a time that we were working with a client and we started with a brand project and then we started their website project. And we were pretty far down the road of doing the website. We had designed out the homepage. They had approved the homepage. And if you don't know our process at DayCloud, what we do is we do sitemap, wireframes, and then we design out the homepage for the client to make sure that they're cool with the design and content of the website. And then once that's approved, then we move into designing out the rest of the website. Well, up to that point, they'd approved everything. And then they had said yes to the homepage concept for the design and everything. And so we had went ahead and designed out the whole rest of the website. And then they hired a marketing person. And that is absolutely lovely. However, when things like that happen, I'm sure other people have experienced, immediately blows up the entire project. Because, as any marketing person would, they want to put their opinions and ideas and their own spin on things, which I totally get. It's just that we were so far along into the process that it created a lot of contention between us and that new marketing person. And she wanted us to redesign the entire thing. And at the time, I was not ballsy enough to say, hey, this is actually out of scope. You need to pay us more. Well, I take that back. I did say, hey, I think we need to, I think this is going to cost more. And she freaked out, got so angry with me and just got very mad and wrote a very scathing email to me. And I was like, ah! And then she proceeded to send us a website that she had designed on Wix and said, this is the website I want you to design. And so we redesigned the whole thing based on a Wix template that she put together.
Don't you just love that?
Oh, it's so great.
It's like one of our clients who very far along in a project, and they ended up sending us the pretty much Canva created graphic and wanted us to replicate it. And they're like, do this exactly. And you're like, well, it eliminates all creativity, all customization of this website or kind of thing. And it's so funny how people can write scathing emails, but they can't hop on a phone and talk to you. At least it's so much ballsier to hop on a call and do a scathing voicemail or something.
Yeah, because that's also happened to us.
Love those. I don't answer those. Please go to my voicemail.
Take a step back and
I'm going to send this to the whole team's Slack so they can all experience this at the same time.
We're all in this together. Misery does love company. Yeah, so that was just one And I would say that that is a very good example of a time that I definitely did not handle the situation too great. But didn't handle it great is probably what I would say. One, I was definitely not brave enough. I was a little bit too much of a coward to figure out scope change and pushback and working through some of that stuff. Because when you have such a stringent process like what we do at DayCloud, where it's like we need to make sure that from discovery to execution, we are working with the same people, because with our organization, with DayCloud, we are having very deliberate conversations around what it is that we are building. And so if you're not there for the discovery, for the stylescape conversations, for like each one of those very deliberate and curated conversations that DayCloud has as a part of our process, things can go awry. For example, someone can step in the middle of that process and not understand the history and the context of all those things. And because they don't have that context, they will come in with their own context that is outside of the context that we have together that we've been already working on. And they will not have the same goals that we have worked toward from the beginning. And so things will get blown up, right? And so I think that's why, like in that instance, I wasn't able to really do a good job of articulating that and expressing that to the client at that time. And I would say, I should have been able to say, hey, hang on a sec, first, I think that the client didn't understand how to tell us that he didn't like the website that we designed. And so it's my job as the person in charge of creative and the person in charge of my job as the one in charge of DayCloud and providing services to a client is to make sure that our clients walk away happy and that we do great work. So figuring out how to marry those two things, that's my job as the person in charge of DayCloud, right? And so that was breakdown number one, was I didn't realize that the client wasn't happy, right, with that piece. And so that's where I should have started, was hey, what happened? Where did we go awry? Let's figure this out, And then from there, being able to say, hey, really what we, from the beginning, we really try to make sure that we don't introduce people into the process that haven't been with us all along. Because when that happens, basically what ends up happening is scope changes and goals change, creative changes, all that kind of stuff. And it's simply just because we all of a sudden have a new opinion in the mix.
But that's also why, like in branding, we're branding stuff, as we're going along the road, we tell people who, the clients that we're working with, they're like, hey, I know you might want to go to someone else with get their opinion on this, but take it with a grain of salt because they were in an initial discovery conversation. They are going to have a different vision for your business than what's already been spoken to you about. And it's make sure you minimize that feedback because it's going to end up blowing this out of proportion.
Yes. Yep. That's exactly right. And whenever we start a new branding project with any client, we always say a couple of different things. One is that if there is anyone who is going to have an opinion on this brand that could sway your opinion, they need to be in the discovery process. They have to be involved in that conversation from the beginning. And so we will not have a brand discovery meeting unless all of those key stakeholders are booked and on the schedule for that meeting. it is vital. It is crucial. And we won't do it unless they all are there. And then to Chelsea's point, that's exactly right. Once we present some initial concepts, we recommend that clients do not share the concepts with the world. And then we say, like, if you must show it to a spouse or whoever, please understand that they do not have the context of all of the discovery time that we've spent, all the conversations that we've spent. They are going to give their opinion and not necessarily the right ones. And like you said, take it with a grain of salt and all this stuff. And so we always tell clients, if possible, please don't share this. But if you must, please consider that their opinion is not necessarily going to provide value to our selections. I have, over the years, kind of opted for a few different tactics. Depending on how the client is responding, if they're being kind about it, and depending on where our deadlines are at. So those are two kind of like primary things that I am looking at and determining how much leeway I have in my pushback. So one, if the client is being kind about like, oh, like, you guys are really great, I love you, this isn't quite feeling, like, I'm not really loving it, it's not feeling great and stuff, then I will say, okay, like, let's jump on a call, let's talk through, and I will just ask them questions. I will try to lead with questions, and I will say, like, okay, what's not feeling right? How is this not working? What are you not loving? What is, and I'll try to just like tuss out or just like pull out from them what's going on, basically, And then again, it's kind of my job to like read between the lines with that client. If we're under a tight deadline, sometimes that kind of conversation and working through is not as reasonable, like we just maybe can't even do that. And so in that instance, it will be a phone call and it's like, hey, just send me what you want, like draw it out, scratch it out on a piece of paper and just send me what it is, how big do you really want the logo? like I need you to just be very clear with your edits and just send it over or get it done. So, and that also kind of depends on like, are we talking about a brand or are we talking about a print piece, right? Brand, like it requires a lot of thought and a lot more strategy and a lot more like who's our audience and a lot more of that kind of stuff. If it's a print piece, like a print ad, like their deadlines are very hard and it's like just sometimes you just have to get them out the door, right?
I think it's also important. I think it's also important to note that like not everybody compliments sandwiches their feedback. They're not always like, I love you guys, but sometimes they're like, no, this is wrong. Yeah. And that's kind of like where you and I have to like take a moment, just like find some grace before we respond, just to kind of like analyze the situation and respond appropriately.
Yep. So yes, that's exactly right. So, and we have had situations like that. So like that one was, hey, this is if we have a good relationship, they're nice, but we're just like not, the artwork is just like not hitting the mark. Now let's say we have a really difficult client. They're not nice. Their feedback is insulting. So, there are always going to be clients who don't know how to give feedback in a respectful way. Now, I am a big believer that even if someone is disrespectful to you, that does not authorize us to be disrespectful back, right? Like I believe in having a good reputation. And the way I believe in having a good reputation is one, following through on my word, and two, being as respectful and kind as I possibly can, right? And just as a side note, kindness and nice are not the same thing. So that's maybe a different conversation. But because you can push back and be firm and create boundaries and all that stuff and still be kind and require respect at the same time, which is what I recommend doing with these difficult clients that are sometimes disrespectful to you. And that is going to happen because there's many clients and just humans in general that don't understand how to offer feedback in a healthy, considerate, kind way. And that just happens.
And there has been like times where a client's been, their tone or their way they send a message is continuously kind of like disrespectful and demeaning. And like we will respond in, like you said, like a kind way and say like, hey, the way you're presenting, the way you're kind of like giving feedback to our designers is kind of like, it's kind of disrespectful and we don't like appreciate it. And then they'll come back and be like, what? I don't think it's disrespectful at all. It's so mind-boggling to me. People who are aware of how they are received by other people, kind of like it's so crazy to kind of like get the different perspective, and I don't know. It's funny.
It's kind of like, wait, so this is just how you normally talk to people? Like, you just normally are belittling to people? Like, okay, well, let me help you understand how you sound.
The thing is, like, one client that comes to my mind is like on the phone, they were fine. They were trying to be nice and like, but like via email, it was just like very demeaning and very like and very unhealthy and not working at all for the betterment of their brand.
Oh yeah, for sure. And the other thing too is that like you will have clients that are just straight up bullies. I've had lots of those actually. And they will like push you because I think, well, I don't want to make that generalization, but it just, in my experience, a lot of people that have bullied me have been people who were like CEOs or just like high level executives. And in some respect, I don't know, perhaps it's just a speculation. Perhaps that's how they got to be the place that they were at, is by bullying people into submission, into like doing what they wanted them to do,
I think it's also very industry specific too. I know you don't want to like generalize the industry, but like obviously there's certain traits that people have when they're part of like a certain business or company that like, that's why they're successful in that business. Like, as creatives, you wouldn't be super successful in creatives wouldn't be super successful in like a complete analytical, very like, I don't know, that kind of realm. So I'm like, it makes sense that they strive, but like as far as like those conversations.
That's true. So what do you do when you have a difficult client? Chelsea, what do you recommend?
Knowing Jesus. Say a
right?
For you.
Yeah, right.
But
like bad situation, you're under a deadline, like, all hope is lost.
I always run to you. No, I'm kidding.
That's fine. You can ask me what I do.
Usually it's just kind of like if it's under a crunch, it's just kind of trying to figure out the best route to get things done on time and communicate with the right people. Because when you're not communicating to the people who are making decisions, there's a lot of things that can go askew. If you're communicating in between like middlemen, it's like a game of telephone. You're not getting direct answers. Things are getting lost in communication. You don't have all the information that you need to get the deadline done. So oftentimes like, it's just better to hop on a phone call rather than like try through an email. I mean, I know a lot of people hesitate to just call somebody, but honestly, that's the most effective way to like get things done on time and communicate the most efficiently.
Yeah. And keep them from sending nasty emails. really
You're like, I have
insulting
your
emails.
phone number, and you call them back. You're like,
Oh yeah.
just saw your nice email.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. One of the things, like I said, I have dealt with a lot of clients who were super bullies to me. And I have run the gamut on how I have tried to deal with them. They would send texts and, at 10 o'clock at night, that was like, did you do this yet? Have you done that? Like, what are you doing? Like, have you fixed this yet? Or like, freaking out, yelling at us, or whatever it is. Or clients that are calling me, leaving me very, very nasty voicemails on vacation that are like, I need you to take a look at this, like, this is not right. It's not hitting the mark, and all this good stuff. And so recently we had one, and I was out of town, and I had seen the artwork that we had produced. And so I knew that what we had given them was great. Not that it ever isn't. It's always great. And so I knew that like what we had produced was good freaking work. And that I just had a little bit of a bad feeling that maybe this client was going to try to get out of using us in the future, or like maybe they were going to try to like not pay us because we didn't hit the mark for them or something like that. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to push back on this very specifically to her terms. And anyway, so what I did was I did not respond to her voicemail because I was on vacation, but I did email her and I said, hey, client, I believe that what we produced for you was gorgeous and it definitely hit the mark. I used her language specifically, and I did that on purpose. And I said, however, if you feel like it's not hitting your specific vision, then we're happy to make adjustments. Now, keep in mind that one of the things that we do at DayCloud to create a backstop from clients that may never be happy is that we say that every deliverable only allows for 2 rounds of edits. And if they would like more than that, then it requires additional scope. So meaning additional dollars that they pay us. And so usually that allows most clients to be like, yep, we're good. Right. And so after that initial email that I sent back to her, that was like, hey, you know what? I actually think it's really good work and it does hit the mark. After I sent that initial like pushback to her using her language and saying, but if it doesn't match what your vision is, then I don't know how you feel, Chelsea, but I felt like she backed off a little bit, because after that, the emails that I saw from her were more of like deferential to us. It seemed like she was like, well, do you guys think this? Or do you think this? She's like, I think it could be better this way, but what do you guys think? It felt like she backed off a little bit. She still had her strong opinions, but she was at least kinder about it.
I think she backed off a little bit. I think that whole week was a blur for me. Yeah. but like, I think it's also like important to be very fact based, and you're like in the boundary set and like rehashing things. You're like, hey, you didn't tell us any of this information in the beginning of the project before we started running with it.
Yeah.
And we are at
Yeah.
like, or like be very clear and be like, we are at round 2 of edits.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
anything more is going to cost you and it's going to be fall out of scope. And like, and we said that multiple times. And so it's like, it wasn't like a one-time thing. So it's very important to just over communicate the facts, because a lot of times they're like, they don't know what they said and originally, or if there's like very detailed things, depending on their industry, if there's things they have to work around, like you just like, you can clearly say just like, we need to know all of these details in the beginning, because we are not mind readers. We are just like working with the information that has been given. And so I'm like, I think people really appreciate honesty and just like the over communication, because it's when people don't communicate, it's when things like shit hits the fan, because they're like, well, you didn't talk to us for like 2 days. You didn't relay the status of the project. You didn't talk to us. Like, what's happening, kind of thing.
Yeah. That's such a good point, because like in this very specific instance, they wanted a copy of another ad that they had produced, but never told us that until we had redone the ad like 3 times over. And then come to find out, she just wanted an exact match of another ad that their internal team had done. And so to your point, Chelsea, that's a really good point of like, hey, let's set some expectations at the beginning of how many rounds of edits do you get? What exactly is the concept you're going for here? Yeah, that's exactly right. That's a very good point.
But I think we've always done a very good job of handling like those kind of challenges and difficult clients throughout the years, at least since I've been here. I mean, I do think killing people with kindness is a real thing. Like, even when they're coming at you and just being like, well, thanks for that. Like not like cheesy, but like, just be like, thank you for the communication. Thanks for getting to me very quickly. Just like constantly being appreciative that they're kind of like helping you. You get it? Because as soon as you take a defensive stance, they're going to take a defensive stance. And then it's going to turn into a battle, a war that needs to be worked through.
Yep. Yes. And one of my big pieces too is to lead with questions. If someone is being grumpy about the creative or being grumpy about your work or something like that, I always try to do my best to say, okay, tell me more. Like, what are you thinking? How is that hitting you? What are your thoughts on this? What is it that you're not loving? Is it the color here? Is it the font here? Is it the, like trying to default more to like questioning what they're thinking, even to the degree of like, okay, tell me more of like, what are your specific goals here? Or who is your target audience here? Which for DayCloud, we always ask those things at the beginning of a project, always up front that we ask those things. So we have that information. But sometimes I ask those questions to a client in order to force them to remember that it's not their project, it's for their audience or for this, specific purpose, and it's not their personal, preferences.
I think our team does a great job of kind of constantly reminding from that initial discovery kickoff, all that information. Like, we're like, hey, like you see this, we did this because of what you said then. And like the reason we constantly explain the reasoning behind our design. And
yep, that's exactly right. I love that you shared that. Mm-hmm.
And then I guess, as we're kind of like, I guess the next thing would be, how do we know when to fire a client?
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you know when? What would you say, Chelsea?
I don't think we've ever like cold turkey, whatever, just like completely cut anybody off in my time of being at DayCloud Studios. But like, I think we do a good job of making sure we're ending on good terms, whether that be like, you know what? Like, I know this is kind of like the scope of the project, but kind of like the way I don't think we should work on, or like, I don't think we should do this other project that you have for us, because like, just be like, I don't think we're a good fit for your needs. Like, in phrasing it like, in a respectful way, is just not continuing on in that project because of either communication style isn't matching and we're constantly butting heads and nothing's changing, or we've kind of like run it through our resources of how to work with clients in order to make the process like easier on our designers and not like like not just like us. Like, it's okay if you and I are facing a little bit of like back and forth, but it trickles
that's kind
down.
of our jobs.
Yeah, it trickles down into like the designers, and like they're like, I don't know what the vision, because like if you think from an internal team perspective, and if you have a team who are like willing to serve, and they just want to know what you want, and they want to be as helpful as possible. And I think it's just like difficult from them to be like, oh, I like, they feel bad. They're like, I missed the mark, but I'm like, I want to do it right. I just don't know what direction to run through. And I think people get frustrated when there aren't clear information and direction from the client. So
yeah. That's really good insight. I would say, so I have had to fire clients, unfortunately.
Ready to hear about it.
Well, honestly, what you just described is kind of essentially what we did. I would say that there's a couple different like metrics that we consider when we are like, hey, this isn't going to work out, when we have to break up with a client, right? And I would say that one is, do we need the money? Like, like, can we afford to break up with them? And there have been times when some of those clients that I have mentioned that were just straight up bullies, like that was a time when it's like, we had to have that client, and they were insane bullies, but we didn't have a choice. And so,
I mean, oftentimes it is the people that pay the bills, are the ones that are a little bit more difficult.
It can be.
Yes, sometimes, but like, I mean, I love working with some of like our smaller businesses, that the ones that don't always have like all the money to spend. They're like startups, or like they're just very passionate about what they're like going with, and they're like honestly like easiest people to work with, because they're just like super thankful and super grateful for the guidance, the help, the expertise. And then I mean, those other instances are kind of like not as fun, but they pay the bills.
So like, that's kind of our number one. Can we afford to break up with them? Can we afford to fire them? If yes, then the next thing is, to me, I so strongly believe in relationships, and I so strongly believe in partnerships with our clients, that my next metric is there any way that we can work around, through, on this issue, right? If it's a client where we're just struggling with some of the creative process, or it's just a little herky-jerky, or, maybe we're just like a little bit misaligned on some things, or, something that I'm like, no, we just need to push through and we will get it. We will get there. Then I'm like, no, we're going to keep them, because I think that, like, I believe so strongly in relationships and loyalty and all that stuff. So like, I'm like, I want to put in the work to make this relationship work. And but then if it's like, man, every conversation we have with them is they are bullies, they demean, every email is giving me anxiety, or every conversation I have with them, it is, they are just you know,
or you're like, Chelsea, don't bring them up today.
Yeah. Yes. You know, like everything about them is unkind, and it's been that way from the beginning, and they are just always unkind. And especially if I start seeing it leak into my employees, if I see that they are also unkind to my team, that's where I'm like, okay, nope. Like, I'm not okay with this. Like, kind of like to your point, Chelsea, if they are gruff or a little rough with me, I'm like, whatever, you know, like, I don't care. But when they are unkind or bullying to someone on my team, I go kind of mama bear about it, and I get very protective. And so that is usually where I draw the line. And I'm like, sorry, like, you got to go. We believe in kindness at DayCloud, and we treat all of our clients with kindness. And so we expect to be treated with kindness back. And if you cannot do that, then we can't work together. And so that's what we ended up doing with the one client I mentioned that we did have to go separate ways with. We set up a meeting with her, and we said, hey, our communication styles are different. We feel that you are unkind in the way that you communicate with us, and it's just not how we work. And because of that, we're going to finish out this project that we currently have with you, and then we're going to go our separate ways. We're not going to continue working with you after this. She was pretty upset, rightfully so. No one likes getting broken up with. Yeah. But, it was the best thing for the team, because it was trickling down to my employees, and I couldn't handle that. She had yelled at a couple of people and had sent some nasty emails and just different things. And so that's my line where I'm like, nope, like that's not going to happen. And it was, we could afford to be done. So
yeah,
those are kind of my two metrics.
We kind of pride ourselves on not having, or trying not to have, like a toxic work environment that breeds
Absolutely.
from toxic client relationships, because at the end of the day, especially in small teams like DayCloud Studios, everyone feels the impact of small movements and small things. So yeah. So a little bit of wrapping up right now. We talked about difficult client experiences. Liz brought up some of her experiences in her 11 plus years of running DayCloud Studios, and going from no balls to too many balls. But I'm sure we'll have to have another episode about this, because I'm sure there's plenty of other stories to dig into. But
sure.
You're like, sure.
Well, yeah, I have all the stories. I would love to hear if other people have found other ways to manage difficult clients, and just how they've done that.
Or we're all for hearing your stories, even if you didn't think you managed it very well.
Yeah. You could pull a Liz and just totally backed off from the get-go at the beginning.
But yeah, send us your stories, send us your feedback or any questions you have. And if you like this episode, share, follow, send it to your friends, and stay tuned for more conversations about running a creative agency. Deuces, we out. 30-second dance party.